Netero spends a large portion of his remaining preparation time meditating in the mountains to get ready for his fight against Meruem. Hey, what's up everybody? It's LeeLos, and today we're talking about why Netero versus the Royal Guard is obvious. Stay steady in pursuit of your dreams and goals. You're born to win, you're made for greatness, and I definitely believe in you guys. Keep up the great work each and every day. So Netero versus the Royal Guard is a battle between the leader of the entire Hunter organization versus some of the most powerful opponents in the entire world of Hunter x Hunter. Today we're going to analyze every single power-up and ability these characters have displayed to find out who's stronger than who between these characters. So Netero's involvement in the Chimera Ant arc begins with Netero looking at Pitou and straight up saying that Pitou is stronger than he is. This is one of the many examples in the series where experienced Nen users get an overall understanding of their opponent's strength just by looking at them. Hisoka, Knuckle, and Killua all have similar statements all throughout the series. We don't know if Netero's measuring Pitou's overall aura similar to how Knuckle does when he looks at Yuppie, or maybe he's really being honest, using all of his experience and just straight up admitting that he thinks he would lose in a drawn out battle against this opponent. Netero then goes on to say that he's less than half his prime strength and states that he thinks he's around on par with Morel and Nove now. Nove, later in the series, goes on to admit that Netero was lying here and says that Netero is still far stronger than Nove and Morel. But it should be noted, Nove doesn't say that Netero was lying about being less than half his prime strength, and he doesn't say that Netero was lying about being weaker than Pitou. As the arc progresses, it's implied that Netero might be getting steadily stronger. As Netero's taking out teams of Chimera Ants, Netero states that he's getting his groove back, and Nove says that Netero's in top form. Netero puts on his battle shirt, something stated that he only wears when he's getting truly serious. It's been worn so rarely that even an experienced hunter like Nove thought it was just a rumor. Netero then shows off his Ren to Colt in order to understand how he compares to Meruem. Colt says that Netero doesn't need to worry about Meruem, he'll be wiped out by just one of his Royal Guard. There's many important implications from this scene. For one, this scene pretty much confirms that characters like Pitou have more raw total aura than Netero does, and most likely outscales Netero in raw stats like strength and defense, especially when you consider the fact that this scene mirrors what Killua said at the start of the Chimera Ant arc, in which Killua states that after seeing Pitou's aura up close, he doesn't think that Netero, Nove, or Morel would be able to win against Pitou. A more highball interpretation of this statement is that Killua thought Pitou would defeat Netero, Morel, and Nove all working together at the same time, and Pitou did not even have a Hatsu ability yet. Factoring in Pitou's Hatsu ability, the stat difference would then become even more significant. Considering that this is the third statement in the series in which someone is saying that the Royal Guard are straight up stronger than Netero is, it's very likely that the Royal Guard, or at the very least Pitou, outscale Netero in raw aura and aura capacity. This is further backed up by the fact that at the start of the palace invasion, Netero hits Pitou with his Hatsu ability with the intention of sending Pitou flying miles away. Despite this, the attack does zero notable damage. Considering that Netero is a master enhancer and he hit Pitou point blank with his Hatsu ability, the fact that it did zero notable damage is absolutely insane. A feat like that can really only be achieved if you have more raw total aura than your opponent, or at the very least outscale them in raw strength and defense. For example, this would be similar to Gon hitting someone with rock or scissors and it just does zero notable damage to them. It should also be noted that Colt is not a Nen master, so an argument can be made that he doesn't fully understand all of the different elements that would go into Nen combat, such as how battle experience and different Hatsu abilities can change the outcome of a fight. Netero spends a large portion of his remaining preparation time meditating in the mountains to get ready for his fight against Meruem. The effects of this meditation training are debatable. A lowball interpretation is that all this meditation training does is charge up Zero Hand. You could argue that this meditation is a prerequisite condition for Zero Hand, meaning it doesn't affect any of his overall stats at all. It's simply step one of charging up his aura for Zero Hand. A highball interpretation is that this meditation training makes him magnitude stronger, maybe even somewhat somewhat relative to his prime self, with a more medium ball interpretation being this meditation training is a prerequisite for charging up Zero Hand, and it makes him a slight amount stronger. There are some debates about how strong is Netero when he enters the palace invasion compared to his prime self. It's debatable because we don't really know what exactly did he mean by less than half of his prime strength. Did he have less than half of his total aura, or did his physical body simply lose 50% of its raw strength? Or maybe he was just rusty from not going on hunter missions in a while. There's a lot of different interpretations about how strong this palace invasion Netero actually is, so let me know your thoughts on it in the comments. All that being said, despite all of this training, an attack from his Hatsu ability still did 0 notable damage to Pito, which is very strong evidence that the Royal Guard outscale Netero even now in terms of raw aura and aura output. But considering there's many other factors that go into a Nen battle, that doesn't necessarily mean the Royal Guard will win. Now all that being said, who would be more likely to win between Netero and the Royal Guards? When Netero fought Meruem, he was so severely outclassed in overall stats that the narrator states that from Meruem's perspective, Netero's Buddha hands were the equivalent of a toddler throwing a tantrum. Despite this, Netero was still able to hit Meruem thousands of times before Meruem could hit Netero twice. Meruem was holding back in the battle because he was avoiding killing Netero the entire fight, so it's very likely that if he was trying to kill Netero, he would have with the first attack that landed. The main reason Meruem was able to perform this feat is because he's a super genius unmatched by basically every character in Hunter x Hunter. His pattern recognition was so insane that it was almost the same thing as being able to see into the future. None of the Royal Guards have that statement. Considering that Netero was slapping around Meruem and sending Meruem flying, someone who outscales all of the Royal Guard, the Royal Guard would also be sent flying by Netero's Buddha hands. The only difference is that they would have less durability than Meruem, and they wouldn't have the intellect to be able to bypass the Buddha hands. It was stated that Netero had millions of flawless attack patterns. He only got to perform a few thousand of them, meaning Meruem defeated Netero before he got to use even 1% of his total arsenal. The Royal Guard do not have the intelligence to perform this same feat. Essentially, if a Royal Guard like Pito or especially Yuppie tried to fight Netero 1v1, they're going to be endlessly slapped around by Netero's Buddha hands. They're simply too fast, and the attack patterns are too complex for them to be able to figure out how to escape them. It should be noted that after Netero slapped Meruem thousands of times, he was starting to feel the slightest dull sensation of pain. It was almost nothing, but it was still something. Lowball, this implies that over time, you actually might be able to bypass someone's Nen defense if you hit them thousands of times, even if they outstat you. Or a more highball interpretation of this scene is maybe Meruem was never using Nen defense at all, and he was just tanking Netero's attacks with his raw base durability. If that's the case, maybe then you could make an argument that the Royal Guard could just stalemate Netero. Maybe they could just put Nen defense up and actually survive millions of attacks, wait until Netero finally gets tired enough for them to land one strike and win, if you use that highball interpretation. The low to medium ball interpretation is that this scene implies that over time you actually can bypass someone's Nen defense that has more aura than you if you hit them thousands of times. All that being said, Netero versus the Royal Guard like Pito or Yuppie would go similar to Netero versus Meruem, only they never figure out how to bypass the Buddha hands. Then the question becomes, what's more likely to happen first? Netero slaps Pito around so many times that Netero actually gets tired, and Pito would then have to have enough strength and speed remaining after being hit by tens to maybe even hundreds of thousands of Buddha hand slaps to either one-shot Netero or simply outmaneuver Netero's Buddha hands from that point in the fight onwards. Or the other option would be that Netero simply kills Pito with the tens to thousands of Buddha hand slaps. It should be noted that Netero can also simply hit Pito with Zero Hand after the countless Buddha hand slaps as well. Considering that the Royal Guards would not only be hit by an essentially endless amount of Buddha hand slaps from Netero, but they would also take more damage from the Buddha hand slaps than Meruem did, and take more damage damage from zero hand than Meruem did, the odds are simply slightly more likely that Netero would win a drawn-out battle against the Royal Guard 1v1. Some potential win conditions for the Royal Guard would include post-mortem Nen Pito and some scenarios with Poof using his scales. If Netero kills Pito with zero hand and zero hand doesn't just actually disintegrate Pito, then there's a chance that Pito comes back with post-mortem Nen and defeats Netero in his exhausted form. And another scenario would be that Netero just kills Pito only using Buddha hand slaps and then drops his guard thinking that the fight's over, and post-mortem Nen Pito could come back and win the fight with a surprise attack. But the odds of Netero dropping his guard entirely are less likely than it was with Adult Gon, because Netero is a much more experienced Nen master, and he wouldn't be distracted by extreme sadness the way that Adult Gon was. If Netero's on guard and had to fight a post-mortem Nen Pito, the odds of him winning are still pretty likely. The fact that Adult Gon was speed blitzing post-mortem Nen Pito implies that post-mortem Nen Pito would be slower than Meruem as well, meaning it would still get slapped around by the Buddha hands. Now with Poof, if Netero didn't get the information from the rest of his team members on how Poof's scales work, there's a small chance he could breathe in the scales and be mentally manipulated by Poof during their battle. To be completely honest, the odds of him not knowing about Poof's ability are also unlikely, because Morel and Gon both knew about the ability as well. So even though the Royal Guard would have more raw strength and defense than Netero, they simply don't have the speed or intelligence to bypass Netero's Buddha hands, so they can never use that strength to defeat him. If they were to fight 1v1, Netero would be simply more likely to win due to being a far more experienced Nen master. That really is the main thing that's allowing him to win this fight, and his Hatsu ability is just actually insane. Finally, it should be noted that if all three Royal Guards jump Netero, then Netero's pretty much guaranteed to lose that. They outscale him in stats so much that just one serious strike from pretty much any of the Royal Guards would do serious damage to Netero. If he's fighting all three of the Royal Guard at once, you just need two of them to take the onslaught of the Buddha hand attacks while one of them sneaks Netero, and then they win. They really would only need to land a couple of attacks to defeat Netero in that situation. I'd say even if Netero's 2v1ing the Royal Guards, the odds of him winning is very, very low. Once again, they would only need to land a couple of attacks. Meanwhile, Netero at the very least would need to land thousands. That's everything I wanted to say. Thank you guys for watching. I appreciate the views in the comments. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.